Alright, good morning Elvis fans. This is Rare Elvis Photos. Gonna give this a try. We are here at the beach, as you can see right there. I'm hoping the sound quality is gonna be good enough for this. But we do have Elvis and Kathy we need to continue reading, even if it's on vacation. I gotta get my foot up here, so let's go ahead and take it back just a teeny bit here. We were still sitting in bed. Oh, by the way, please share the video around if you can on different pages. There's going to be some commercials, I'm sure, but please just skip through them when you can, and try to get to the end of the reading here. All right, we were still sitting in bed. Elvis's arm was around me, and the other hand was holding a book he read aloud. Suddenly, he looked down and said, "You have the most beautiful feet I've ever seen." His remark surprised me, and I was a little relieved that the subject had changed abruptly. "Do you think so?" "I've always loved my feet, and I really try to take care of them." "I love beautiful feet," he said, "and I think yours are just gorgeous." "Well, feet are important to me too," I told him, "and yours are just as perfect as you are." Elvis moved his feet closer and said, "I have twin toes, you see. The second and third toes are the same length. They're identical. Lots of twins have this feature." Then Elvis laughed. "I remember a girl once. We were getting along really well. We were on the bed and she took off her shoes and stockings and her feet were just plain ugly. It turned me off so much I just got up and left. I'll bet she never knew what happened to me," he said with another fit of laughter. "You didn't? That's terrible." I usually didn't like for Elvis to tell me stories of other women. I guess no woman does, but this was so funny and he enjoyed telling it so much that I just had to join into the laughter too. Besides, I was really in a great mood now that he told me I had beautiful feet. Well, Elvis put the book down and kissed me. As usual, his kisses aroused me, but this time I didn't try to pull away. I kissed him back and I held on to him, and then as I ran my hands over his shoulders, his skin so unbelievably smooth, there was a sense of urgency within myself I had never known before. We both knew without saying a word that this was the right time and the right place, that I was ready to give all of myself to him without question or reservation. He was tender, sweet, so gentle, so understanding, and we entered a place where there was no time, no sound except the loving, passionate words in my ear, and the world seemed a distant place as Elvis took me to a special land I never knew before, where there were no feelings of guilt, no self-recriminations, only love, peace, and the warmth of our bodies breathing as one. I loved Elvis with all of my heart, and nothing could make what we had done together an evil thing. He was beautiful, wonderful, and for the first time in my life, I felt complete, as if I had always been waiting for him to make love to me. Well, I couldn't sleep after that, and as the purple light crept over Mount San Jacinto, I got up quietly and went outside and stood on Elvis's private patio. Chilled by the early morning air, I stood there, watching the mountain. It changed from purples to pink as the sun came up. The massive beauty of that moment made me feel my insignificance, and I tried to pray, but the words wouldn't come, and tears blurred my eyes. I found my true love, I thought. But have I lost God? How could I feel this powerful a love and be expected to deny it, this opening of my heart? Then I began to shiver and went inside to find the warm comfort of Elvis's arms. That afternoon, the bodyguards were having margaritas, a rather lethal drink made with tequila, and in a complete turnaround for me, I said yes when they offered. Well, Elvis never drank, but didn't object to his bodyguards drinking if they kept it under control. However, one margarita called for a second one, and I was feeling pretty tipsy. I know how Elvis hated to see anyone drunk, but especially women, and maybe this was sort of a rebellion for me. I still don't know why I did, but Elvis thought it was kind of cute and funny, and this time instead of anger, he laughed and teased me. I guess I was feeling that if I had already gone to hell, I might as well go all the way. But thank heaven, this was only a temporary emotional binge and was not the beginning of a disturbing new pattern. That night we did discuss something that had been in the back of my mind, but I didn't want to think about it. Elvis held me close, and we were in bed. Kathy, do you know anything about birth control? He sounded very serious. A little, just what I've heard, but not much. Well, honey, you ought to get the pill or something. We wouldn't want you to get pregnant. I pulled away from him, suddenly frightened. I don't want to get pregnant either. What about the pill? I think you should talk to a doctor about that. It's important. A wave of dread came over me. What would I ever say to my parents? How could I ever face my friends if I got pregnant? I was filled with fear. I will, I said in a tone that made him laugh. Honey, don't get all worked up now. I just want you to do it soon, that's all. He said as he pulled me back into his arms. Well, I leaned my head onto his chest and shuddered at the possibility. Then I heard Elvis chuckling, and he broke into a laugh. What's so funny? I couldn't find any humor in the conversation. I was just thinking, he said between chuckles, how tiny you are and how funny you would look all puffed out, big with child, and singing a duet with me on stage. Now I tried to picture it too, and I began to chuckle myself. And soon we were both laughing, and I held my nightgown way out and puffed my cheeks and pretended I was on stage giving a performance. With that, Elvis laughed even harder, and soon he was saying, Oh, Kathy, I love you. I really do, little one. Well, it was very difficult parting after 3 days of being with him, but I had to go. I had signed contracts, had commitments to perform, and there was no choice. You don't have to go to work, Minnie Mouse. I'll always take care of you. Well, I want to work. That's a big part of my life. I just couldn't give it up. I'll just cancel out. Just you don't have nothing to worry about money or nothing, he pleaded. Now look, my voice was sharp. You are in the same business, and if I canceled out on you, it would be a really hardship. And if you were counting on me to perform, these people are counting on me, and I can't let them down. Well, he stopped arguing then. When will you be free? As soon as my jobs are over, I promise. I will definitely be free next week. Promise? I promise, and of course I was. So let's stop real quick and talk about that a little bit. So, a couple different things there. Obviously, Elvis knew Kathy getting pregnant would be a bad thing. He's married, got a daughter. And the other thing that really stands out to me there is the fact that he really wanted her to stay with him. And one of the things that we do know about Elvis is that Elvis really wanted somebody to be with him all the time, to be available. And in that, I guess, the traditional sense of a relationship, the career woman. We know how he felt about Anna Margaret, the sense of passion that he had about Anna Margaret. Sorry, I didn't mean to show you my socks. And, there's a lot of people that say it wouldn't have worked out because Anne was married to her career, and, she did love Elvis, and Elvis loved her, but it wouldn't work in the traditional sense of that relationship part of it. And, with Elvis asking Kathy to give up her career, in a sense, to cancel, I think he was kind of searching for an answer on, first off, how much she wanted to be with him, and Kathy, she was not willing to give up her music, her commitments. And in the end, I think Elvis found a respect for that because he was the same way. I mean, he made his shows no matter what. And he committed, even when he was sick, to do these shows. So let's continue. Since I had returned from Elvis's tour, I'd been extremely busy. Once back in Los Angeles, I was running from place to place, taping TV shows, taking care of my personal business and my animals. But this return home from Palm Springs was much different. See, I was walking on air, moving from singing date to singing date with remarkable energy. I was laughing more, joking more, and to any keen observer, it was obvious that Kathy Westmoreland was head over heels in love. But as the week wore on, the seeds of doubt in the back of my mind grew. What was I doing? Elvis was married, and even if I wasn't married, he was not just husband material. By his own admission, he could not remain faithful to one woman. I'm not just the type of man to sit home and watch TV, he told me one night. Elvis was not nearly as promiscuous as some of his tabloids try to make him out to be, because he was very discerning about relationships. He had to trust the woman he was with, had to care for her, and all of that took time and patience. He had plenty of opportunities because women flocked around him like ants to chocolate cake at a picnic. However, Elvis was careful, discreet in public, and most of the groupies did not interest him. I knew all this, but I still missed him terribly. As the week wore on, I felt more and more incomplete, and in spite of all my dark thoughts, I couldn't wait for Elvis's plane to pick me up and take me to Palm Springs. At last, the weekend rolled around, and once again, without planning it, we found ourselves dressed in the same colors. Elvis was dressed in a black leather outfit. He liked the fact that I was dressed in black too and commented on it. You look really good in black, honey. I really like you in it. Well, sweetheart, I guess he said. He also showed me his latest pair of sunglasses, which matched his outfit. Later, he whipped out a giant suitcase and threw it on the bathroom counter. "My God," I exclaimed as he excitedly unclasped the case, spilling sunglasses by the dozens and sending them crashing and flying across the tile floor. "I don't know if I told you, Kathy, but I got glaucoma now, and my eyes are really sensitive to light. I've got to wear dark glasses all the time," he said, "almost all the time. I've never seen so many glasses in my life." They were his favorite frames, the silver or gold ones, with the TCB emblem, and the tints included every possible shade within the spectrum of the rainbow. "If I got to wear these damn things," Elvis smiled, making fun of himself, "I'm going to have one in every color." That weekend started out on a high note. I didn't intend to be a pun, but Charlie Hodge and I had the funniest argument about whether one note he was playing on the piano was a high C or a double high C. Elvis listened to us and just kept laughing and laughing and laughing. "Quit arguing, you two." No, there's no way to imitate Elvis's laugh and even come close to it. He had an amazing laugh. Let's talk about that laugh for a second, and reminisce. Remember that Are You Lonesome Tonight live performance? If you haven't seen it, Google it, because Elvis, especially if you're a new fan, Elvis's laugh was amazing. It was pure. It was, I don't know, it was almost childlike. And when he got to laughing, he couldn't stop laughing. And I was scrolling through Facebook earlier, and there was a point where there was a picture came up of Elvis holding a guitar pick. And it said in that picture, Elvis always held a guitar pick with sharp edges on the corners instead of a round one. And that was, so if he got to laughing, he could just squeeze it into his palm and kind of, maybe that pain would bring him back and he wouldn't laugh anymore, because it was infectious, and it was almost like hiccups. He couldn't stop laughing. So I can just imagine that during this scene, that Elvis just could not stop laughing, and it was just hilarious to him. It was then that Charlie and I realized how intense we had become over something so unimportant, and we joined in the laughter too. Then that afternoon, Elvis told me a humorous but sad story that touched my heart. When he was making movies in Hollywood, he made 33 films and disliked almost all of them. He bought a house in Beverly Hills. It was roomy enough, but wasn't too bad a commute to the studios. Besides, Beverly Hills offers more police security than any other city in the world, and most celebrities feel safe there. Elvis loved animals, and he missed his pets that he had to leave behind at Graceland. So he got himself a pet chimpanzee and named him Scatter. I love Scatter. He was so affectionate and so smart. Elvis told me, and I could see his eyes light up with a memory. I used to dress him up in a tux and send my limo after him and bring him to the studios. I loved seeing him in that limo all dressed up, holding a cigar. The cigar was never lit, but it did add a lot to the role Scatter was playing, and I think he knew it. Well, Scatter was one of the best buddies I had around that time. He would hug me, and we would have long conversations about this and that. Scatter seemed to understand what I said to him, Elvis recalled with a smile. But one day Scatter got a little frisky. Elvis said, and somebody at the house left the door ajar. Scatter was a curious guy, so he decided to take a walk. Next door, there was a lot of laughter and people talking, and Scatter knew that he had stumbled upon a party, so he decided to go. The front door of the neighbor's house must have been unlocked because Scatter just walked right in. The hostess was pregnant at the time, which might account for her reaction. But all these Beverly Hills types were sitting around the dining table having dinner. All of a sudden, Scatter decided to join them and jump right up in a chandelier and started swinging back and forth. The hostess nearly fainted from fright, and the guests started screaming and scared poor Scatter half to death. But by this time, he was missed at home when one of the bodyguards came to his rescue. Oh, that's hilarious, I laughed, loving the way Elvis was telling the story. Then what happened? Well, then it kind of got serious. The folks filed a lawsuit, and besides, they complained to the city of Beverly Hills, which is really stuffy about animals. And before you know, the city told me Scatter had to go. Oh no, how could they do that? I had been an animal lover all my life. By that time, I was seething at the entire city of Beverly Hills. I didn't know what to do. I loved that little fella so much. But I had no choice, and I shipped him off to Graceland, where I knew everyone would make sure he was taken care of, Elvis said sadly. Well, at least you had a place to send him. You didn't have to give him away to strangers, at least. Well, I wouldn't have said a word if I had known then the outcome of the story. Scatter didn't quite see it that way. They always told me that chimps really love somebody forever, and I guess it's true. Because Scatter refused to eat, just sat around and mourned because he missed me so much. And then Daddy called me from Graceland and told me Scatter had just died of a broken heart. There were tears in Elvis's eyes. That's awful and so sad was all I could think of to say. So I just moved out of Beverly Hills, sold the house, and never went back. And I made sure everybody knew just what I thought of that place. Elvis struck back in the only way he knew how, but his voice told me he still felt pain of losing Scatter. That story endeared him to me more than ever. Elvis was especially excited about a speech he had made to the National JC Convention in Memphis, where he had been named one of the country's 10 most outstanding young men. He stood on a footstool and with gestures repeated his speech. I won't forget the song he quoted in closing. Without a song, the day will never end. Without a song, the day would end. Without a song, the road would never bend. Without a song, a man ain't got a friend. Without a song. And then he finished his speech by saying, so I'll just keep on singing that song. He was so proud of being named by the JCs and had picked up several programs which he gave out to his special friends, and I still have mine. But that night, in the still quietness of each other's arms, and after a flurry of passion, things began to go topsy-turvy. I think of the words we said to one another, and to this day, I regret what happened. Looking back, I can see the whole idea of being in love with a married man affected me more deeply than I had imagined. I would be ecstatic when he held me, responsive to his lovemaking, and totally, madly, wildly in love. And then I would go into a deep, depressive, feeling guilty, sinful, unworthy, and suffering inwardly because I could find no valid excuse for committing adultery, love, or no love. My moods would swing up and down, back and forth. Elvis took the brunt of all my pent-up feelings this night. Out of nowhere, I said, we have to stop all this because I can't stand myself anymore. I really can't excuse my behavior. Having sex with a married man when I know it isn't going anywhere, and it doesn't mean as much as to you as it does to me. Elvis was surprised at my sudden pronouncement. Sweetheart, what's this? I'm through. No more. It's over, I said, bouncing out of bed, and I began to pace back and forth. Does that mean I have to get someone else, train them just like I want them? What did you say? I couldn't believe my ears. Am I some kind of dog or puppy that you housebreak, trained to be a good pet? I'm a woman, a human being, and I hate you. I hate you for saying that. You will just have to find yourself another Gladys. Ooh, Elvis had never seen me so angry. I don't think I'd ever been so angry or upset in my life. I kept raving and ranting. He sat in bed, legs crossed, lips tight with silent anger, and stared straight ahead. Suddenly, when I had quieted down, he said in a hurt voice, almost a whisper, my mother's name was Gladys. Oh, Elvis, I didn't know. I've always used that name when I make a point, like another Gladys. Believe me, it had nothing to do with your mother. He sat up in bed, studying my face for a long, silent period, trying to figure out if I was telling the truth. Elvis loved his mother, but he had never referred to her by her name before, or if he did, I had forgotten. However, I knew I had touched something raw and painful, and I was sick about the way I had just heard him. I really didn't know your mother's name. I never would have said that if I'd have known. It's important you believe me. But you hurt me so much saying you were training me, like some dumb animal just to give you pleasure. Elvis got up and pulled me to him. Sweetheart, I didn't mean it like it sounded. It's just hard for me to find someone who can get used to the way I live, my routine. Please don't act this way. After a long time, while I was appeased, and we apologized to one another over and over, but after that argument, there was just a slight difference in Elvis. Well, as it would be. That's something that's pretty, that she unintentionally, in a sense, didn't mean to say. Into Elvis's attitude towards me. I couldn't define it, but it was there. I wanted to bite my tongue off for being so emotional. After all, I walked into our relationship with my eyes wide open. Elvis never hid anything from me. I knew he was married. He had told me often enough what he thought of marriage, and had even told me several times that he could not be faithful to one woman. So what was wrong with me? Why couldn't I just accept him the way he was, not try to change him? Because he couldn't be changed, and I knew that. Why the frustration? But like it or not, we had both crossed some invisible but forbidden boundary, entered a land that was very strange for me. On the surface, everything seemed the same. Elvis sang, I sang, we talked, we laughed, took swims and drove with the guys in his dune buggies, but there was a tension that hadn't been present before. Nothing I could put a finger on, like flickering shadows in the night. It was as if both of us were in mourning, but we didn't know who had died. So, real quick on that part. I mean, there's going to be a difference. She just told him she couldn't do it anymore. I didn't read anything where she said, I made a mistake, I can't do it. I mean, Elvis was tense. Elvis was withdrawn because he was trying to step back emotionally, and that's why. There's no question about why. That's how I would be. I was sad when I left Palm Springs the next day. But Elvis pretended it was just like always. But I knew I had stepped on some sacred ground, that I behaved impulsively, and he didn't like my attitude, especially since he had been honest from the very beginning. I went back to working feeling very low. I had 5 more shows to do with Bobby Darin, and I had to get through them somehow. But then Tom Diskin called and said we were going on tour, which would begin in Oakland, move on to Portland, Oregon, Seattle, San Francisco, one day in LA, then San Diego, ending up in Oklahoma City, and we would all be back home by Thanksgiving. So I canceled out on Bobby Darin and left on tour for Elvis. It was not a nice thing to do to my contractor, but when you're in love, you do some very unthoughtful things to some very nice people. For some reason, I felt good to be on the road again this time. I loved walking up into a different city each day, and I was crazy about flying them. On this flight, we used Conrad Hilton's personal plane, a G2 jet, which seemed to take off like a rocket than a plane, and Elvis loved it. He kept talking about the plane and how he relished going at great speeds. We were sitting together in the back of the G2, and I could still see Elvis in his black cape, leaning back in his seat during takeoff and making faces as if he could feel the wind racing through his face. It was really comical to watch. Elvis had a new look on this trip. He traveled with a cape and a cane. So this is pretty interesting. And so she was there. Of course, we know she was there since she's toured with him from the beginning. But she was there from the very moment that his new look with the canes and the cape started. I remember one cane because it was so beautiful. It had a lion's head that served as a cane handle, and the lion was made of gold with precious stones. Now, I don't know if he had designed it or found it somewhere, but it was smashing. Touring by plane also just seemed to add to the excitement of going to a different place. I seemed to thrive on the road tours in those days. Don't ask me why, because when you do one-night shows and move from city to city, you have no idea where you are most of the time. Oakland looks like Portland, and Portland looks like Glendale. It's all the same, yet different. The Elvis audiences were just as rambunctious as ever, and the screaming fans were just as loud, but this time, it wasn't a shock. Maybe, I mused, I'm getting used to being crazy. Another memory that stands out for me on the way to Portland was when we both saw a double rainbow. Elvis and I just held hands and watched those brilliant colors and knew just seeing such a spectacular sight, well, what it meant that we were destined to have good luck. After Portland, we went on to Seattle, and Elvis was in an exuberant mood. I recalled him standing up in the plane to get everyone's attention, and he had a paper in his hand. Look, everybody, my record sales have just hit a total of 300 million. The Beatles have sold 60 million records. At this writing, Elvis records have sold more than 2 billion copies, Kathy wrote. No one will ever catch up with me now. We all rejoiced at the news. So that's like a little kid. So, that's part of what we love about Elvis. He was excited. He knew that he was doing something right in the right place. And, he felt accepted. Because during that time, we're talking the 70s, he just got done making movies, all those movies, and he felt horrible about them. Got back to live touring. And this was some vindication that he wasn't washed up, and he wasn't over, and he wasn't a loser, like some of the tabloids, put. After Seattle, we headed for a beautiful, romantic San Francisco. But that trip to San Francisco will always remain in my memory, like a hot brand searing into my brain and heart. The trip had been fun and romantic and never predictable because working with Elvis brought fresh excitement every day and every performance. I stayed with Elvis in his suite every night, but I always had a room assigned to me, which was nice because I felt I always had a place to be alone if I wanted to be. However, it was an extravagance because I seldom, if ever, used the room. Well, we're going to stop right there. We got music coming on here at the beach, which is going to interfere with the reading. So I just want to say TCB, TLC. I'm enjoying this beach, thinking of y'all, and taking y'all with me on vacation. Get down here at some point in time if you can, because this is a beautiful area. And I'm hoping that the sound's going to come out good for y'all to be able to hear the story and read along. There's a hurricane out there. It's going to miss us. It's going to so if y'all are in the panhandle of Texas, the middle portion of it, please evacuate. Or keep your eye on it and give yourself enough time to evacuate without getting stuck in traffic and any sort of floods and stuff and surges, because we know what hurricanes can do. And life is much more precious than material things. Just grab the things that are the most important to you, and hopefully you don't get hit. But keep yourself safe out there, okay? This is Rare Elvis Photos, TCB TLC. Till next time. And here's a special message from Johnny Lang, who has a book called My Army Days with Elvis. I'm gonna stick here at the end of this video, so hopefully y'all find it on the podcast. Just click on Rare Elvis Photos below the video. You'll see the name of the channel here, and then you'll see podcast and you'll see playlist, and there will be a podcast for the My Army Days with Elvis. You'll see, and that way you can read that book along too. It's very funny, some great endearing stories, and some details about Elvis you probably don't know. All right, till next time, Rare Elvis Photos over now.
Hey Joe, it's your buddy Keith, one of your favorite subscribers. Here with Johnny Lang, and here he is has something to say. So take it away, Johnny.
Ready? Hey Joe, Johnny Lang. I sure want to thank you for what you're doing for my book. I really appreciate it. And all your 65,000 subscribers, it's wonderful. And I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate it.
Take care.